You know, they say all good things must come to an end. So this is the beginning of the end with our beautiful Infiniti FX35. We have owned it for over a decade. We have taken it to multiple adventures. It might be sad to say goodbye to this car, but we are going to cherish all the beautiful memories we had together, all the adventures that we did. But our family has outgrown this car, and now it's time for us to look for the next car that will take us to the future adventures. But before we do that, let's take a look at this car. I'll do a quick review. I'll give you our experience with the car for the past 11 years. And then at the end of it, I'll give you like a quick buyer's guide, things to look for if you're in the market for one of these. So the FX35 is what I call a grown man or a family man 350Z. And the reason I say this is because they share the same platform, they share the same engine, and they share the same transmission if you get the 350Z with automatic transmission, or 370Z depending on which generation you're getting. So the suspension is a little bit stiff, it's a very firm suspension, and you can feel every bump on the road. It does help with the handling. It has a very smart all-wheel drive system, and with this system it's kind of fun because it's the same thing you get with the Nissan GT-R, and it allows you to slide the rear end a little bit so you can have a little bit of fun, sliding around before the electronics activate and stop you from having the fun. So this is rear wheel biased. In a way, it gives you a little bit of a taste of a rear wheel drive car. So this is the second generation of the Infiniti FX35. It came out in 2009, but the first generation was from 2003. They look kind of similar, but this one looks a little bit more elegant compared to the first generation, but the exterior shape is the same. When Nissan came up with this design, they called it the bionic cheetah. Cheetah? Whatever this animal is. But I think they got this design from something else, something that I happen to like. And in my opinion, I think they got the inspiration from the original Datsun 240Z. As you can see, this hood is quite long. It reminds me of that 240Z, but I think the shape aged quite well. Even today, it still looks modern. And I think Infiniti or Nissan, they could have kept this car, just update a few things, like give it some LED lights, but keep the same design, because this was a winning formula. Anytime you saw this car, you knew it was Infiniti and you cannot confuse it for anything else. The cars that came out at the same time, like a Porsche Cayenne, is still on the market today, and Porsche just keep upgrading the Cayenne to look more modern. Nissan should have kept this car and just modernize it. This was a winning formula and it could have kept them in the market, because today Nissan and Infiniti, they're in a lot of trouble. So the car does need some detailing. Don't chew me on the comments saying I'm reviewing a dirty car. It's not a garage queen, so this is an honest review. I want to show you the car, the way it's used, and the condition the car is in after being used for all those years. But the exterior paint aged very well, and this car, for the past 11 years we have owned it, it was always parked outside. So it did endure hot summers and cold winters. The paint still looked great. And the only issue with the paint is because of our mistake, like where we park it and where we drive it. It might have some scratches here and there. You can see the clear coat is peeling off on the side mirror, but that's it. Nowhere else the paint is peeling off. The exterior plastic are kind of fading away, but that's expected for a car that is 15 years old. But I think if you retouch these ones, you recondition them, it will look good as new. The headlights, they could need some polishing. So I'll say the exterior quality, the material they used, they held up quite well for 15 years. So now let's go ahead and look at the interior and see how that held up. Oh, that's noisy. The leather for most part is still soft. There are some wear and tear. You can see the seat over here and also on this side bolstering, but this side, the lumbar support, still looks great. And these are powered seats, and they are also heated and cooled, and the heating and cooling system still works. And the dash is all leather, and there is no bubbling. Even after being in the sun for 15 years, the dash still looks great. So the passenger side seat looks great, but there is also some wear and tear that you can see. So as we move on to the back seat, they barely get used, so they are still in great condition. The leather is still soft. Even the floor carpet are still in great shape. And now let's look at the parts that did not hold up too well. One of them is the steering wheel. The part that we have suede or Alcantara, that part started to look beat up and a little bit rough. The leather part still looks decent, so we did put a cover on it to hide all of it. And you don't even hold this part. You normally hold the steering wheel over here, and you can see there is wear and tear over there too. The chrome plastic they used on top of the shifter, that started to flake off and it's a little bit rough. You can say it's because you have a wedding ring on and it can scratch it. I just think the plastic they used was cheap. So the steering wheel and this shifter knob are the only two things that the wear is beyond normal. You know, the seat, you kind of expect that. But overall, the interior held up quite well for 15 years. Moving on to the trunk of the car did come with this rubber mat. I mean, we even put firewood on this car, so having a protective mat like this is quite nice because the carpet underneath still looks brand new. So again, we have owned the car for 11 years. We have put over 130,000 miles, and I would say most of those, they were trouble-free. This car was quite reliable, but we had some issue here and there, and some were very cheap to fix, and others we are still trying to figure it out. We haven't fixed them yet. So one of the things we haven't fixed was this side mirror. Actually, the motor is still functional, but it makes weird noises. The automated motion is not functional anymore. And the dealership wanted over $600 to replace this because they said you cannot just replace the motor, you have to replace the whole thing. So moving on to the mechanical, maybe the more expensive parts. Let's start with the cheap one. The shocks to hold the hood up, those are blown. The one for the tailgate also went out, and those are relatively pricey. They're a couple $100. I rarely open the engine bay, but the trunk we use it all the time, so I replaced those. I have not replaced these ones yet, but they are on the to-do list on this car. For the first 10 years, this car has been quite reliable, but the 11th year, which is this year, we have experienced multiple issues. The radiator developed a leak and I had to fix it. So changing the radiator in this car is easier said than done. And let me show you why. So underneath this plastic, which has all these bolts over here, that's where you find the radiator, which is brand new, and you also find the AC unit condenser. So if you look on the manual and you're trying just to change the radiator, it actually recommends removing all of this together. And that includes the condenser, the radiator, and this plastic piece. The issue with that is you have to disconnect the air conditioning line, which you might have to discharge the AC system. And also you have to disconnect the transmission cooling line, which are on this side. You know, on the assembly line, this makes a lot of sense. You put this together somewhere and then you drop it in here as one unit and then just connect the hoses. But if you're a mechanic or if you try to do it at home, it's a pain and it doesn't make any sense why you should have to disconnect the AC system just to change your radiator. My brother and I spent like 4 hours trying to take that radiator out, and we were able to actually do it without disconnecting the AC system. So the second issue, I would say we had this issue over time, but it got worse this year. So when I hit the start button here, I would say 90% of the time the engine will start with the first try. Sometime it has left me stranded. Actually, here is the video of it when this was happening. I cannot get it to start. I think I checked everything. The battery is brand new. Well, relatively new. I put it in there last year. It's from 2023 and this is 2024. So it's about a year old. So I don't think it's the battery. And if I hit this, you can see it has power. It comes on, everything comes on. But it will not start. I keep trying to want to start, but I think the starter might be out. I can push it again. I think it's time to tow it and take it to a mechanic who can put a new starter in there and do the proper diagnostic. But it might be the last year with this car. I said the same thing last year, but the car is still here. But this year, I think it will be the last year. I hooked up a jumper and it will not start it. I did have to tow the car to a mechanic because the car will not start at all for about 10 minutes. So major issue with Infiniti, put the foot on the brake and hit start. And if I do, nothing happens. See, it just makes a noise. I'll do it again. So the issue with starting the car, we have not been able to solve it. When I took it to the mechanic, it was just a local mechanic. They said it was an IPDM computer. Actually, I have it here. We got another one from Nissan. It's this module right here, the IPDM. It has a bunch of fuses and you can see the connector for the harness. This was $2,000. So the dealer installed it, they did the calibration, but the issue continues. But that was a mistake on our part. We should have done proper diagnosis and we did not. So it cost us $2,000 and the issue continues. So the other issue that developed within the last few months is the fuel gauge. Although it says I have almost a full tank, the fuel I have there is maybe half a tank. It's not accurate at all. So in the fuel tank, we have a little floater connected to the fuel pump, and that floater goes up and down depending on how much gas you have in there. I think that's broken or stuck. But the issue is I cannot just buy the floater, I have to buy the whole fuel pump. So that's another issue that developed this year, and it has actually left me on the side of the road. Luckily, I knew it was gas and I did not have to tow it this time. Before I forget, there is one time that we got stuck on the side of the road with smoke coming out of the engine, and it's because the heater core connector fell apart and it sent the coolant all over the hot engine, and that's why we had that smoke. This is very common with all Nissan and Infiniti that share this engine. Some of the hot coolant does go into the heater core, which actually heats the air in your cabin. That's how you get warm air in the car. But to connect the hoses back there, they use a T connector, and because of thermal expansion and contraction, that connector disintegrates and it falls apart, and all your coolant leaks out. So that was the first time we had to tow the car. It was more time consuming than expensive. So quite a few issues this year, but the car is still drivable. I'm still driving it, and I think over time I'll fix most of the issue before I decide to sell the car. So with all these issues, would I buy this car again? And the answer is yes. 11 years is a very long time. Even for the most reliable cars, I would suspect at some point, if you give it enough time, they will develop some issues. This being a high performance car and a luxury car with all these electronics, something will go bad with time. So practicality is the main reason you're getting rid of this car. Yes, I know it's old and it's time to get something newer, but lack of interior storage is one thing. Because of the way the car is shaped, you don't have enough room in the trunk, and also the cabin is a little bit tight. And that's one thing you notice once you get in this car. These back-facing seats, they take up so much space. I barely have any room up front. My knees are right on the glove box. I barely have any room here. But if your baby uses the front-facing seat, you might have enough room and it might not be an issue. Because today you have performance SUV from BMW, from Porsche, and even American are in the game. And sometimes the European versions, they can be a little bit pricey to maintain. And that's why you may lean towards Infiniti FX35 or the QX70. So the other reason you may want one of these is because they are very affordable. The first generation, those are easily under $10,000. This second generation of the FX, they might be anywhere from $8,000 to maybe $20,000. And the other reason you may empty your wallet for one of these is because it's a good looking car. And the other reason you want one of these is because of performance. You're getting 300 horsepower, the same engines you get in 370Zs and 350Zs, which are some of the most popular cars you can get on the market today for how cheap they are to maintain and the performance that you get. You also get stiffer suspension, and you get even a double wishbone suspension on the front wheels. So if you're in the market for one of these, in my opinion, I would say the newer the better. I would highly recommend it. It has treated us well for 10 straight years. It's just the 11th year we have encountered some issues. So don't hesitate to get one if you get one with low mileage and it's well maintained.